Whoa, hold on, don't leave yet. I know it looks ridiculous, but just give me a chance here. What's up, crew? Welcome back to Libertalia Game Supply. Today I have a Watt Sprite Runic deck for you, and it's ridiculous. It's not that good. I'm working on it. Anyway, we got AGOV Overlord coming out in like a month now, a little under a month, and with that we're getting some new Watt support. We've got the Watt Tuna, and we've got the Watt Kingdom, and then this was also fairly recent. I don't remember what set it came out in, but it was within the last year or two. Now back in the day, I had a Hopper Lock deck that I thought was pretty funny. It was also not very good, but it was enjoyable, and so I wanted to try to build another Watt deck, and oh boy, does that archetype suck. They got very little swarming ability. The Kingdom and the Tuna are the only things that really give them any sort of free special summoning. Their effects all can only happen in the battle phase, and you don't really have any protection or floating or anything of that nature. So I had to start with a large Watt lineup, and then I whittled it down and tried out a few different little engines to combine it with and just figure out how we can make it work. And this is currently where I'm at. So most of this deck is probably pretty standard stuff for any type of Sprite, Runick, hybrid deck that exists now in a few different formats, and so you're probably already familiar with how that works. But as far as the Watt stuff goes, we got the triple Watt Tuna and the triple Watt Cobra, and then the 1 Watt Dragonfly. Now the reason that I'm not playing the Giraffe, which is probably one of the only other ones I would consider trying to fit in here, is because there's just not that much space with the Runic stuff, and I think you need the Runic stuff and the Sprite stuff for sure in order to maintain control of the board, and then your Watts are just kind of there for fun. Obviously, if you're going to play a competitive deck using Runic and Sprite, you're probably not going to play Watts in it. I just wanted to try to use the Tuna because I really like the fish. And how the Tuna works is when it's in your hand, if a monster you control inflicts battle damage, at the end of the damage step, you can special summon it, and then if it inflicts battle damage, it contributes itself plus one other non-tuner to special summon a Watt Synchro monster from your extra deck with a level that equals the combined levels of what you tributed. Now the fact that it summons itself at the end of the damage step means that it combines really well with the Watt Cobra. The Watt Cobra can attack directly, and when it deals damage, it can search a Watt monster and put it in your hand, meaning if you open the Cobra, you can summon the Cobra, attack directly, do 1000 damage, search the Tuna. Tuna will then summon itself, attack directly with the Tuna, do another 800 damage. The Tuna's effect will activate to Synchro Summon, and will make the Taurus. We'll attack with the Taurus for 1600, and then Taurus has the effect that when it deals damage by a direct attack, you can shuffle both 1 Watt Tuner from your graveyard and 1 face-up Thunder non-tuner you control into the deck, and if you do, special summon a Watt Synchro monster from your extra deck, except another copy of itself, and that doesn't limit you to any type of level combination. Now that's pretty cool, except the only other 2 Watt Synchro monsters are Watt Chimera and Watt Hydra, which is absolutely terrible, so we're not playing it at all. So you would attack with the Taurus, use its effect to shuffle itself back from the field and the Tuna back from the graveyard into the deck, summon the Chimera, Chimera will attack. When Chimera does battle damage by a direct attack, it can take a card out of your opponent's hand and put it back on top of their deck, so it rips 1 essentially. So basically all you've done at the end of that is with 1 Cobra, you've done 4800 damage and taken a card out of your opponent's hand. So it doesn't win you the game, it does a big chunk of damage, and it has that 1 card rip. As far as this archetype goes, that's about the best you're getting. As far as the other Watt cards in the deck, the 1 Dragonfly is only hitting here because it's a level 2 and it's got an effect that isn't totally useless. A lot of the other level 2s rely on the direct attack effect, like there's a fish one that can also rip a card out of the opponent's hand. It's just, I mean, you gotta attack direct with it and it does nothing else beyond that, and it just didn't seem like enough value for taking up a slot in the deck. The Dragonfly, however, if it gets destroyed by an opponent's card, either by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Watt monster from your deck, so it can put that Cobra on board for you to go into that little 1 card combo there. It can put the Tuna on board if you just want a tuner for, you can hard Synchro Summon for the Chimera with one of your Sprite monsters, anything like that. The Kingdom is the new continuous spell card. When it's on the field, your opponent can't activate the effects of their monsters in the same column as this card and or one of your Watt monsters that activates when they are normal or special summoned. That is a ridiculous string of limitations there, and that effect is almost never particularly useful, because even if you were to like summon a whole board of Watt monsters, they're not very big attack, and as soon as you start special summoning with them, you have opened up the zones for your opponent to summon in and ignore that effect completely, and so it's just not very good. The reason we play it is because you can target a Watt monster you control, and then you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Thunder monsters, and then you also get to special summon a Watt monster with a different name from your deck and then lose life points equal to its attack. So that also makes the Dragonfly Additionally useful because we're playing the Sprite engine, you would activate the Kingdom, whichever of these you open. You could just put the Dragonfly on board if you want to make your 2s, your Sprint and your Gigantic Sprite. And because of the limitations under like Sprite Starter, for instance, where it limits you to level 2s, it lets you work around that and still swarm the board a little bit. And the only other Watt card we're playing here is Watt Train. I suppose I could see this being bumped up to 2 and being fine, but the 1 felt okay because we're only playing the 10 Watt cards in the main deck anyway, plus the Searcher, so 11. And how it works is you can add Watt cards with different names from your deck to your hand, equal to the number of Thunder monsters you control with different names. And so all of the Sprites are Thunders and the Watts are Thunders. And so you can get a lot of searches off of it, and that's a really powerful search card. Like if you could have that effect in most other decks, that would be insanely good. The reason it's not is because you don't really have Watt cards that swarm very well. Like if you had Watt monsters that could special summon themselves from the hand outside of the tuna or something along those lines, this thing would be super busted. Unfortunately, you do not have that, and so 1 felt okay. It does have an effect out of the graveyard. Once the turn that you used it and sent it to the graveyard has passed, you can then banish it from your graveyard to special summon as many Watt monsters from your hand with different names as possible. So once again, it's a swarm effect, but it takes a few steps to get to actually use it, and it's slow because you would only ever be able to use it on your second turn at the earliest. And once you've summoned a bunch of Watt monsters, you kind of end up getting stuck with just the Watt Synchro monsters unless you haven't used your Kingdom. And so you still don't even have access to a ton of really good extra deck stuff. Now as far as the secondary and tertiary engines here, we've got Sprite. It's just a good level 2 swarm deck. I think most people have seen how this deck plays. It's been out for a while, but basically they all special summon themselves as long as you have a level or rank or link 2 monster on the field, depending on the card that you're looking at. And then when they special summon themselves, they do something or they have some type of negate ability like these two. So the Jet searches a Sprite, spell, or trap. The blue searches another Sprite, and then these guys can negate a monster effect or spell or trap effect as long as you tribute a level or rank or link 2 monster on the board outside of itself. The reason that I settled on the Sprites is because it allows you to put a little bit of control on board that still works within the limitations that the Watts give you, where you kind of are locked down to Thunder monsters, especially once you start getting that Kingdom rolling to be able to put some bodies on board every single turn. As far as the Sprite cards in the extra deck go, we're playing the 2 Sprint, the 2 Gigantic. It's pretty easy to end up putting both of these on board, which gives you the interrupt there. It also gives you the free special summon there. And really all we're trying to do is kind of fill up the board with stuff to hinder the opponent. We're stalling, essentially, and milling with the Runic stuff. And then the Watts are almost like a secondary win condition. So turn 1, as long as you're going second, if you can open that Cobra or get to it pretty easy, you can do that whole 4 to 800 attack plus rip a card combo. Usually you're not too worried about the monsters they put on board unless they have effect negations, and then you're screwed there. But you can just kind of ignore all of it, attack and run through the whole combo and rip a card. And then you're trying to set up stalling cards after that. Beyond that, you're just stalling until you can get the game state grinded out to a point where most combo decks are going to start to burn through a ton of resources, and you've milled through a lot of their options with your Runics, and then you would just do it again. You're going to get the Cobra again, you're going to run through the Cobra line again, and that would be game. And I suppose you could also nickel and dime your way through it with little attacks here and there, but that's not really going to work all that well. The Runics shut you down from using your battle phase, so typically it's turn 1 do damage, turns 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. I'm just grinding and grinding and grinding. Just try not to lose so I can dwindle that deck down low enough to where they're running out of options. And then once you got them there, your card advantage will still be pretty solid, and you just do it again, and that's your W. Because of that, I rely pretty heavily on the Runic cards, and so I put a little bit of a larger Runic extra deck package in here. The only one I've considered cutting down to 1 copy is the Jerry Beanswolf here. I just don't summon it all that much. It's usually going to be Hugin to try to get to the fountain so I can get the draw power going, or it's going to be the Freaky because you need to stall out during the battle phase for a couple turns. I like the Sleipnir a lot just because it gives you that quick removal once every turn, so you can just remove something for the turn that's going to be a problem, prevents me from losing pretty often. And then the Moonin gives you that life point boost, and so if you're going to sit on it for a couple turns, it's nice to just have that extra padding. If I were to cut it, I think I would try to fit this Summoner back in there. You don't really need it for its effect. If it didn't have the stipulation that you were going to only be able to use it on your opponent's turn, then this thing would be super good in this deck, but that limitation sadly hurts you pretty bad, especially because even if we played IP or something, it's not a Thunder, you wouldn't be able to use it all that often or make it that often, and then be able to pass turn while your board's set up to make some type of big explosive link play on your opponent's turn, and so it just doesn't work out all that well. The reason it's in here is because the Sprite monsters can use it as material, and then it gives you that additional boost with the gigantic Sprite where he becomes 3200, which turns him into a little bit of a wall. And so I went back and forth on this. Ultimately, I cut it because it felt like even if I didn't get the 3200 wall, that wasn't really what I was going for anyway. It was the big attack, so you just throw them in defense mode, and you have the special summons, and then if you can combine it with Sprint, you have the interrupt as well. Now, this is far from perfect, and I'm going to keep working on it up until the release of the set, in between some other stuff that I want to work on a little bit here. If you got ideas on how to build this thing a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently, I love to hear about it. I tried out Bysteals and Thunder Dragons, didn't really like either of them all that much. It just seemed like it was two different decks trying to play two different strategies, and it just wasn't working out for me. I even tried to play this, essentially this build more or less, but with no sprites, and I played 3 Giraffe and 3 Honest, with my thought being that turn 1 you're going to go through that Cobra line of play, dig really deep with the Runics to get an Honest in hand, leave a Synchro monster on board with the Chimera, and then when your opponent attacks, you hit them for an Honest, and that's another 1400. The problem with that is it's kind of RNG because you can't really search the Honest, you can only dig for it. And then if they have any sort of effect negation at all on the Honest, you just lose your Chimera and you're going to get blown out pretty bad right there. But I am determined to make the fish something usable, so if you got ideas, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. We got a good bit of time here before this next big release in Yu-Gi-Oh, so make sure you're saving some money if there's stuff you want to pick up. I know this set's going to be a decent release for me. I'm looking forward to getting SP Little Knights finally, such a great card. There's a couple of other legacy support cards in there that I'm looking forward to, so make sure you're ready for all of that. Happy deck building. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Goodbye.